Good morning. It's Market Day Report. We're live from the Farm Progress Show in Decatur, Illinois, and we hope if you make it out for day 3, you'll come by and say hi to us at the RFD TV 10. All right, let's jump into the markets. Overnight trade action. What are we seeing? Well, a little lower trade on the corn market is December 405 and a quarter, down 3/4 of a penny. Just pretty lackluster overnight trade. That trade range was only 2 cents. So, again, pretty tight trade range there on corn. You know, the corn market has been lower now 2 consecutive sessions. Over to the beans. We're unchanged on the November at 1047 and a half, and the deferreds were all in lower territory. We did see soy oil go lower yesterday. That's now 3 sessions lower for bean oil. Okay, to the wheat market. Lower trade in the overnight session. September Chicago at 4.99. It was off 3 1/4. You know, yesterday Kansas City was lower for the 4th straight session. We'll see if hard red winter breaks out of that, but 483 3/4 overnight, down 1 3/4 cents. Spring wheat contracts were lower as well. Now, they've been lower 2 straight sessions, talking about the day sessions. And then we go over to the cotton market, and in the overnight action, actually moving a little higher, up over a half penny at 67.22, but still overall, cotton down 3 straight sessions. Our guest today, Brian Hoops. Brian is with Midwest Market Solutions. And Brian, I wanted to make sure I didn't mention weekly export sales, but a few little nuggets there, right?
Yeah, you can be bet. We can always look at something in these export numbers. They were really decent for the new crop corn. Now we're almost through the old crop marketing season. It ends here another day, so we'll have one more week of those exports next week. But then we'll be completed with that, and we're seeing a lot of that roll from the old crop over into the new crop marketing season. So we have negative numbers, negative about 700,000 bushels of corn, but new crop sales were 82.3, a really outstanding number. Soybeans, we had negative 7 million bushels and 7 million bushel reduction, and then added into the new crop as it's rolled over 50 million bushels. And by far and away, that unknown destination is the biggest buyer of soybeans. China is still absent, but that unknown buyer is out there. Sometimes we think that ends up being China. Don't know if it will be at this year, but at this point in time is when China normally will buy U.S. soybeans. So as we get into our early stages of harvest, usually they try and time harvest lows and buy whatever they need to fill out their export program. South America has produced a monster crop this year, and we don't know that they're going to need to buy any beans at all from the U.S. If they do, it's probably just a token amount. Wheat sales were also very outstanding, 21.3 million bushels. Now, next week's sales won't be as good. These sales incorporate all of last week's private export sale announcements. There was quite a few of them. We haven't had any private export sales this week at all through 4 days out of the 5 this week. So next week's sales will be down considerably. Also, we're going into a 3-day weekend, so we won't have Monday to count as an export day. Of course, we're closed Sunday night, all day Monday. Monday evening, the grain markets reopen to resume trade because of the Labor Day holiday. So first notice days coming up here tonight. You're subject to deliveries if you have September long positions in the grains. Have to be moved out of the way of those by tomorrow morning.
Okay. Hey, Brian, let's take a break. But when we come back, you mentioned China and export sales. China actually has been in the market. And where? We'll tell you as Market Day Report continues in a moment. So the weekly export sales report from USDA out, and we did find China in it. Where? We'll tell you in just a moment. Let's go to the live cattle market. This is how we settled the session yesterday. And again, remember that August contract expires tomorrow. We'll try to converge with cash, which 242 got it done really in the south. Over to the feeders, we've seen higher trade there. A new record in the September of $370 a hundredweight, and we pulled back off of that in the trade. trade yesterday. And then the hog market, hogs have settled higher 5 straight sessions, and we see 93.87 on that October, up 45. And since we're talking about hogs, how about pork? And China taking pork. Now, they weren't in on the export sales, Brian Hoops, Midwest Market Solutions, but they had already purchased some pork, so actually took the inspection there, and some blues and some hides. So China's still there, just not where we'd like to see them.
You're exactly right. They are buying some U.S. pork products. They still have a demand for U.S. pork, and their sales were really strong this week. Over 42 million tons of pork sold, with China accounting for some of those shipments, about 25.6 million tons. Beef sales were decent, 13.6. That's a rebound from the last couple weeks, although next week's sales likely to be slower once again. We did have a little bit of cash cattle trade in that 240 to 242 range, so it's going to be steady-ish with last week's trade, with a lot more trade to come here today and into tomorrow. Probably the surprising news overnight for cattle, there was actually cattle deliveries. About 20 contracts of August cattle were delivered last night. That's the first time we've talked about deliveries in well over an 8-month period. I know I can't remember the last time we had any deliveries. It's been a really long time. Reuters is reporting Mexico is announcing their screwworm cases since July have increased by 53%, which tells us that the border's not going to open anytime soon. They're going to have to get this facility built in Texas. That's going to take some time. But in the meantime, I don't think we're going to see any cattle coming across the border at all because of that increase in their cases in Mexico. We certainly don't want that to happen here in the United States. So we're on the lookout for more cash cattle trade. One thing we've talked about this week is buying demand for Labor Day. Of course, that's this weekend. Our box beef values surged higher Monday, Tuesday, but Wednesday they traded lower. Maybe that's the first sign that that demand has peaked and is starting to fade now, as we should have that Labor Day buying completed sometime this week.
Yeah, good points there, Brian. Brian Hoops is with Midwest Market Solutions.